Hello, in this presentation we will compare QuickBooks Online versus QuickBooks Desktop. Hello, in this presentation we're going to create a purchase order which includes a new item that we will have to set up within QuickBooks Online. We will have a comprehensive QuickBooks Online course soon, if not available yet. We also have a comprehensive Excel course which complements the QuickBooks courses and a QuickBooks Pro desktop version course you can find at the link below. Here we are with the QuickBooks Online dashboard. We will be continuing with the Get Great Guitars problem, setting up a purchase order where we will need a new inventory item which we will then add. In order to get to the purchase orders, we're going to select the plus icon up top. We have our sections, the customers, vendors, employees, and others. We are in the customer section. We're in the vendor section. We're going to be purchasing from the vendor, and we have the purchase order, the item we need. We're going to select the purchase order. Within the purchase order, remember what we're doing with the purchase order is we are requesting to buy something, and there's actually no transaction happening here. A very funny thing about the purchase order is that it's just a documentation that nothing in the financial statements happens, whereas just about every other form we have, there's something that happens to the financial statements. So although we will have numbers here in terms of what we're going to buy for the purchase order, we haven't bought it, and we haven't asked for, and we haven't paid for it, and we haven't received it. Therefore, we're not going to record inventory or the payment. Different than oftentimes when we purchase something personally from something like Amazon or an online distributor, where we actually do pay for it at the time of purchase, even though we have not yet received it. In this case, we're going to say that we're not going to pay for it until we receive it. Very common for that to be the case in a type of situation where we purchase a lot from a particular vendor, giving the purchaser more power to be able to not make the payment until they receive the order and can check the order that it's in compliance with what they wanted to have ordered on the purchase order. So we're going to set up who we're going to purchase from, which is going to be the vendor, which in this case is Fender. We're going to purchase guitars from Fender, which is our vendor. And that is a new vendor, so we're going to set up that vendor. We're going to add the vendor of Fender. We're not going to have an email for Fender at this time. We're going to say the mailing address. We're not going to include anything on the mailing address, the ship to, and then we will have the date that we'll have input here, and that's going to be for the month of February. The date will be 02/09/21. February 9th, 2021. We're going to be working in that year, that month. We keep going through this. We're going to tab through and we get to the product or service that we will have. It's going to be a new one. Typically, if we select the drop down, this is going to be the items we're going to order, typically inventory items. We're purchasing guitars in this case. We don't have this item on there. We're going to add it and we're going to say it's an SQ that we want. So we're going to say tab. That's going to be a new item we need to add. It's going to be an inventory type item, so we're going to select the inventory type item and add this item as we go. Now we're going to tab through this. Typically we just really need to get the sales price and the cost in here. So we're going to tab through this and we're going to say the initial quantity, we don't have any. As of date, we're not going to have, we got reorder point. Where do we, like how low do we want to get before we reorder? We're not going to put anything there at this time. The inventory asset account will be inventory asset. So when we say that we have these guitars, these items, these inventories, they will be in the asset account on the balance sheet. The sales description is it's going to be a Squire. That's the type of guitar we're going to have. And then we're going to say the sales price or rate. So this is what we're going to sell them for, not what we are purchasing them for, which is what will be on the purchase order. Once we sell them, it's going to be for the larger amount of $244, and that's going to be going to the income account of sales of product income. So that's going to be our inventory or our revenue type account or our income type of account. The account that will be recorded once we sell this item for $244 is going to increase revenue or income to that account, increasing net income. It is going to be a taxable item. We're going to have to charge sales tax for it. That will depend on the region we are at as to whether it will be sales tax. In our case, it is taxable, and we tax inventory items and not service items is how we're working our sales tax. Then we're going to say the sales tax category. I'm just going to choose retail here. So you probably want to make sure you're picking the correct category there. So we're calculating the correct sales tax. We just want to make sure to calculate some sales tax so that we know how the sales tax will be calculated. It will differ from place to place. I'm going to say the item is taxable retail item. So then we're going to have the purchasing description. I'm going to say that's the same. So we'll copy this description and that will be the same here. And then finally we have the cost. We're going to sell them for $244. We're going to buy them for $168 in this case. And where did we come up with these numbers, by the way? These are just being given to us. What we would have to do, of course, in real life is note what we're going to buy it for and then decide on the appropriate markup. What do we want to receive as a markup on that? And that's going to be a business decision we'll need to make. Then we have the expense account. When we sell something again, we have the revenue account here and the related expense of us consuming the inventory, the asset in this case, in order to generate revenue. That's an expense. That's our most important expense when we sell inventory items, called cost of goods sold. So that's going to be it. That'll set up our inventory item here rather than having to go to the items section, setting it up there before creating a purchase order or an invoice or a sales receipt. So we're going to say save and close, and it's saying that we are required to have a field up here. So initial quantity I'm going to say is 0. That's indicated by this little star. So we did that on purpose, of course, to note that we have to have that information there. So, and then we're going to say the initial date, and I'm just going to say the beginning of the month, 02, 01 that we're working in, 21 we're working in this month and this year. A reorder point, we don't need that. It's not a required field, no little asterisks. So we're going to keep that as is. And we're going to say save and close. And so there is our information on the purchase order. Here's the product or service, the description, the quantity that we're going to buy is 1. The rate is what we just input into the item of 168, the amount 168. Customer is optional, depends if we're going to order this for a particular customer or if we ordered this for basically the store to have in the store. We're going to say that we ordered this for a particular customer. The scenario being, customer came into the store, says they like this guitar, they would like a different color or something like that. So we're going to basically order the purchase order for that particular guitar and apply it to this particular customer. And by putting the customer in place here, we can use that to generate the rest of the transactions related to this piece of inventory, including the bill, payment of the inventory, the check, and the invoice that we will make to this customer for this guitar that we assume or hope to get for them. So the customer is going to be new music stuff. And so we're going to say that's going to be our customer. This is a new customer, so we're going to add them as a customer. We're not going to add any details. We're just going to save the description there. And that's going to be it. I'm going to click off of that so that it will total up over here. We're not going to add any vendor message or memo at this time or any attachments. So remember what this is going to do in terms of journal entries. Nothing. It's not going to record anything, although we have an amount here. It's not going to increase inventory. It's not going to increase a payable. It's not going to record the fact that we made a payment. We haven't made a payment. We don't have any inventory yet. And we don't owe the inventory because we haven't received it yet and therefore are not yet obligated to pay for it. So there's no transaction here, even though there's a dollar amount, which is unusual, but that dollar amount will be tracked for us within the purchase orders within the system and can then be used to apply out to when we receive the inventory and help us to create the recording of that inventory. So we're just going to save this item. Now we're going to do this one more time. So I'm going to close this one out. We've saved it. I'm going to close it. Then we're going to open another purchase order. I'm going to go to the plus item. We're going to go to vendors, purchase order. And we'll enter another purchase order, more of our standard purchase order that we have had in the past, our main guitars that we purchase. And we're going to purchase from the vendor. If we select the drop down, we'll see the vendors here. We're going to type in the vendor of Epiphone. And here is Epiphone. We're going to purchase guitars here. Again, the spelling, if it's wrong, sorry about that. The address will be here. And then we're going to say the ship to and the purchase order date. We're going to say is 02/09/21. That's going to be the month we are working with this particular problem. We're going to scroll down to the items down here. And note what it did is it remembered the last item, which was an ELP. and the description. So it's populating that for us and trying to help us out there. If we have multiple purchase items, then this may not be the most useful place for that, because we may be ordering different items from the same vendor at any given time, so you have to check that out. If we always order the same item, it could help. This is the main guitar we purchased, so that's actually what we want. The ELP, that's going to be the guitar we are purchasing. The sales description automatically populates. However, we're not going to purchase one this time. We're going to purchase 3 of them at a rate of 400. Amount then 1,200. That'll give us the total amount 1,200. So note once again that although we have 1,200 as the amount, we know that will be the amount. There's no journal entry to this, meaning we didn't get the inventory, we haven't made the payment, we don't even owe that money yet because we haven't received the inventory for that money to be owed. So no transaction happening. However, that 1,200 on the purchase order can be used to generate the bill, to generate the check, to generate the invoice as we move through the process, as we receive the guitar, bill the guitar, pay for the guitar, and then hopefully sell the guitar and invoice clients for it. This time we're not going to have a customer. We're just going to put these guitars, these are our main guitars, we're going to purchase them in and put them in the store. So we'll have these ready to sell within the store. We didn't get any pre-order for them. We don't have any customer to assign them to at this time. So we're just going to save that, and that will be it for the purchase orders. Hello, in this presentation we will create a purchase order with a new item, adding a new item, a new inventory item, while creating the purchase order within QuickBooks Pro 2018. If you've been following along with us, we're going to continue with the Get Great Guitars problem. If not, that is okay. We will be creating a purchase order, and as we create the purchase order, we will be adding a new item and a new customer in that process. If you have the backup up to this point, you can restore the backup, file and restore. Also have the open windows open over here. So if you want to have the open windows, which I suggest having, we go to View and Open Windows List. We currently only have the Home tab open. In order to open the Home tab, go to Company and Home tab. That's where we are currently located within the software. If you're working with us, it's important to have the data up to date up to this point, but if not, you can still take a look at what is happening here in terms of purchasing a new purchase order in order to order new inventory, that inventory being new inventory. So what we're going to do here, the scenario is we're going to create a purchase order. Remember what a purchase order is a request that we're basically sending to our vendor, the people that we purchase from. In our case, we're purchasing guitars, and so we're requesting a guitar from our particular vendor. As we set up the purchase order, we're going to create a new vendor, and we're going to create a new item for a new guitar that we are going to create. Remember that the purchase order is a bit different than most other items on the entire homepage, because the purchase order does not have an actual journal entry behind it, meaning when we create the purchase order, no accounts are going up or down. We're not debiting or crediting anything, or QuickBooks is not debiting or crediting anything. It's just a request. We haven't got the inventory and we have not paid for the inventory. In other words, it's different than when we have our personal purchases from something like Amazon, where we typically pay with a credit card or some other form of payment at the point of purchase, and then we receive the inventory. If we're purchasing a lot from vendors, oftentimes the purchase order then will not have the payment included and will not have the inventory, of course, received at the point of purchase, so it's a bit different there. And then once we receive the inventory, then we'll record the bill that has received. So at the point of the purchase order, just a request, no payment has happened, no transaction. Let's see the purchase order. We're going to click on the purchase order, and we're going to have a new vendor. So if we select the drop down, we're saying here's the vendors. We're going to select a new vendor. In essence, what happened is we had a customer come in and say, you know, I'd like this new guitar. It's going to be a Fender guitar. I don't see those in the store here. We're going to say that's okay. We can order from Fender and order that guitar for you. So we're going to set up a purchase order for this new vendor. So we're going to type in Fender is the new vendor, and we're going to say tab. Now I'm going to type it in there rather than selecting add new, just typing in the new vendor, and then we're going to select tab, and it's going to say we don't have that vendor set up. Would you like to set them up? We're going to say yes, and we're going to go with the quick add instead of the setting up the full process, so we can go through this problem a bit faster. So quick add, not including the address and all the other phone number and contact information, but being enough to create the purchase order. So we're going to say quick add. We're going to say drop ship. We're going to keep that blank. We're going to say it's the template. That's what we want there. The date that we will then have will be the 9th. So I'm going to say I'm on the 6th right now of the current year. This is the year that we will be working this problem in. I'm going to just select the plus button to move it up to the 9th. So that's a little bit faster if you get used to doing that. Then we're going to go to the purchase order number. We got the vendor, and we've got our information. Now we're going to have to put in the new purchase order information, a new item. Remember that the item is the actual inventory item. If we select the items, we will not have the inventory item here because it's going to be new. It would be somewhere in the inventory parts list. So we're going to create a new one, and it's going to be called a Squire. We're going to abbreviate it SQ for the item name. And we're going to select tab, and it's going to ask us, do we want to set that up? And of course, we're going to say, yes, we do. So we'll set up this new item. This is a piece of inventory that we're setting up. We have the drop down here, so we're going to say it's going to be an inventory part. That is correct, so the default is correct. We're going to have the item name here. This is going to be the short name, so just our quick name, the SQ, and we're going to give it the subtitle. Manufacturer part number, we don't have one. The full description Squire is going to be the full description. Let me do that one more time. That's going to be the full description. Tabbing through the rest here, it will populate over here automatically. That's what we want. Then we of course need the cost and the sales field. So we're going to say this is the cost, is what we buy them for, $168. We're going to tab down, we got the cost of goods sold. That's going to be the income statement account that is affected when we sell this item. And then the other side, of course, the sales price. That's what we purchase them for. That's what we sell them for. That's going to be $244. We do have sales tax on this account, so we have to record the sales tax for this. The preferred vendor then is going to be Fender. So Fender is going to be our preferred vendor. And then we have the income tax account is going to be merchandise sales. So when we make the sale, it's going to increase merchandise sales by the 244, and that will increase sales by 244 and increase the cost of goods sold expense by 168, the difference being the effect on net income. So that's going to be that. We're going to say OK. It's going to ask if we want to add that to our list. We're going to say yes. And so there it is. We have our new item, description, quantity. We're going to say that we're purchasing one of these, and we're purchasing it for a specific customer. Now remember, you don't have to have a customer field here for buying in bulk. We might not have any customers. We might be buying it for the store. But we can have a customer if we're purchasing this purchase order for a particular customer. And then when we create the invoice at the point in time that we're completing the process, delivering the guitar to the customer, we can pull this information from the purchase order automatically to the invoice, save us some time with that process. We're going to say it's new music stuff is going to be the name of the store that we will be setting up. And again, it's a new customer, so we're just going to type that in. It's not going to be in the drop down. And once we say tab, we're going to set up this new customer. Now, again, I'm going to use the quick add just so we can move forward with this. That's all we need for the purchase order. However, if it were a new customer, we would probably want the address and make sure that we have everything in our database program within QuickBooks. But we're going to say quick add here in order to just have enough information for the purchase order. Then I'm going to say save and new. We're going to record this with a save and new. And we're going to record one other purchase order, and that's just going to be our normal store purchase order for the information for the stocking the store for the guitars within the store, meaning we're not going to have a customer related to it. So for that, we're going to purchase an Epiphone, and that's going to be our vendor. We're going to tab through this. We're going to keep the date, keep the purchase order number, vendor, our information the same. We're purchasing an ELP, so we can type that in, and the amount should, or the specific inventory item should populate as we type, as it has. And that will be the description. We're going to buy 3 of these at $400, and that's going to give us the $1,200. Note here, this is in contrast to what we have just done. The vendor that we typically use, are one of our normal vendors, the item already in place, giving us the description already in place. We're going to buy 3 of them for the store as opposed to for a particular customer, and therefore not need to record anything in the customer field. Then we have the total here. That's what we expect to pay. Remember that neither of these are actually being paid. Neither of these have actually been received. This is informational data within QuickBooks, data not being present, not being recorded on the financial statements in terms of the balance sheet and the profit and loss. So we're going to say save and close, and those will be our purchases for this time.